And good evening, and welcome to another edition of the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by K5 Construction, a family-owned and operated custom builder that stands out from the rest for its commitment to quality and excellence. From design and planning to the final construction, K5 Construction delivers superior results on every project. Check them out at www.buildwithk5.com. It is week number 3 of the Big High School Sports Show here on 98.9 WXCO, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. Along with former Wausau West head football coach Jason Foster, making sure everything is running properly as we back with you here. But, it's a summer-like day, but we're going to have some football weather, and I think it's an interesting week because we're going to be talking about conference games.
Yeah, it's exciting. Last week was kind of what we expected, kind of that last round of non-conference games gives the benchmark of from comparing the week 1 scores to the week 2 scores, but this is the week where the games count and matter even more. Like every week now, it kind of drives whether or not you're going to be a playoff team, which is ultimately everyone's goal.
There's still a lot of question marks, though. I know you said when you came in, what do you know? And basically, I still don't know a lot. I honestly think that some years you have a real feel for who are the really good teams and maybe who are the teams that are going to struggle. I think there's still a lot of question marks out there as we get into week 3, aren't there?
Yeah, I think part of it's these new conferences, right? Like from a Valley standpoint, when you used to have the connections to the Fox Valley Association, you kind of knew year in and year out what each program. So if you saw a score of a Valley school versus a Fox Valley school, you kind of knew what that score meant. But we don't have as much familiarity with the Big River. So what does is Menominee up or is Menominee down? Is this the Menominee of 10 years ago, or is this Menominee? Right. Yeah. So, and kind of the same with the Great Northern too, right? Some new teams in there, like haven't seen the Tomahawk in a few years in there, and East going in there and being kind of new to being back to having a full squad. So yeah, there's still a lot of question marks.
Coming up on the program, we have another pair of special guests coming up at about 6:25 this evening. Our coach guest, and when I talk about question marks, this team does not have the number of question marks. The Stratford Tigers, defending state champs, and I think for Stratford football, the best thing is to walk off the field at Camp Randall Stadium with a win, but the second one is probably walking off the field at Edgar with a win, and that's what happened last week. The Stratford Tigers defeated the Edgar Wildcats on the road, and we're going to talk to the head football coach at Stratford, Jason Tubbs, coming up at approximately 6:25. Then it will be our student-athlete guest, and from Newman Catholic High School, a senior offensive lineman, Evan Groene, and I wanted to have one of the linemen, especially Evan Groene, because last week Newman Catholic was able to win over Phillips 34-12, but they lost their quarterback with about a quarter and a half left in a one-score game, and they had no quarterback. They had to go into a Wildcat, use their running back as a QB, and they were able to win up front, even with their opponents basically knowing they would have to run the football. And we'll talk about that situation and the Newman Cardinals with senior Evan Groene coming up at 7:06 here this evening. So, again, a couple of great guests, and glad you could be with us here for the Big High School Sports Show, again, presented by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. And actually, Coach, let's flip it around this week because we do have a coach from the CWC-Large. Let's grab the CWC-Large results and go through those first up here this week. And let's start off with the Stratford Tigers taking on the Edgar Wildcats. And it was Stratford winning in Edgar 21-8. Stratford now 2-0 on the season. Edgar 1-1. It was not an offensive game, and it was an old-fashioned kind of football game. Neither team able to put up a lot of yardage. 162 yards for Stratford, 151 for Edgar. No rusher had more than 37 yards for either team. No receiver had more than 33 yards for either team. Alec Chappell of Stratford, 17 tackles. Xander Curtis had 11 tackles for the Tigers. Gavin Maurer and Ty Schnell, 10 tackles each for Edgar. It was definitely a defensive first game, but it's basically what you expect when Stratford and Edgar get together.
Yeah, absolutely. Another classic matchup between the two. The stats are exactly what you'd expect from a game like this. Completely balanced, tons of defensive stats. The thing that sticks out just a little bit is the score. Usually these games are a one-score affair, or maybe an extra point or a 2-point conversion is the difference in the game. So 21-8 is probably a larger margin of victory than we usually expect in this game. I'll be interested to ask Coach Tubbs later today, from a game plan, you mentioned it earlier and you hit it on the head, right? to them, a successful season is being in Madison for the championship
Right.
game. Number 2 or 1A on the list is Edgar. So from a game planning standpoint, him, Coach Takis before him, Jerry Sins forever. Is there an Edgar game plan that is different than they game? Obviously, our game plans change from week to week, but this rivalry is so old. Like, the games have all come down to just that one score, extra point, one way or another. How do you prepare to play Edgar, and how does Edgar prepare to play Stratford every year? I'm interested to hear his take on that.
And it's going to be interesting to talk to him, number 1, about that, number 2, about his team, and number 3 as well, with the what is it, the success ratio?
Competitive balance.
Competitive balance. Okay, we got to make it right there, but it's based on success, and they definitely have been successful as they've been since we were young, and that's a long time.
That is a long time.
So we'll talk about that as well. So plenty to talk about with the head coach of the Stratford Tigers, Jason Tubbs, coming up in our second segment of the show at approximately 6:25 here this evening. Also in the CWC-Large, when I said earlier, some of these teams I'm not sure about yet. I think Wittenberg-Burnham kind of falls there. They had fallen in their first game against Bonduelle, non-conference game in week 1, which again was a very good non-conference opponent on the road in a tough venue. Then they played at home against Tomahawk, and Tomahawk's been obviously it's a great Northern Conference team again. And when you think about that, that's slightly bigger, but at the same time, they've been a bit of a struggle on the field for a number of years. And Whitburn had all they could handle at home last week. The Chargers ultimately defeated Tomahawk 26-14, so both teams 1-1 on the season. Wittenberg-Burnham came out quickly, had a 19-7 lead at the half, but it would get tight late. It stayed 19-7 until Rex Riley, the quarterback for Tomahawk, had a touchdown run with 4:19 left. They pulled to within a score at 19-14, but then Wittenberg-Burnham was able to respond and put it away with a 50-yard touchdown run by Brady Schmidt with 1:19 left to give Whitburn the win. But that's one of the schools where they've had so much success in recent years, and nothing is guaranteed. We see they lost their quarterback. They've lost another number of really important players. So it's very difficult to know, even 2 weeks in, about a team like Wittenberg-Burnham, because, again, high school football, you don't go out there and recruit. You just bring up the next class. And I think right now there are some question marks about in a very tough conference as well.
Yeah, question mark. I would agree with you. Wittenberg's one of the biggest question marks on this sheet that we'll talk about today. And if you look at kind of weave the first 2 week scores together and try to figure out who's what, Tomahawk very much handled a Crandon team like you probably expected them to the week before, and Merrill kind of got the business from Crandon a little bit this last week. Came away with a victory. We'll talk about that. But then on the flip side of that, we talked about what a strong team Bonduelle is, and Bonduelle got it handed to them by Coleman last Friday. I saw that score come across the screen last, so I kind of scratched my head. I think what it's leading towards is maybe Wittenberg isn't quite as strong, and I think one of the things you see in the smaller schools, and when I say that, smaller enrollment, right? Like nothing to speak of their program, the Stratfords, the Edgars, Amherst of the world. But I think when you lose one or two guys, like in addition to having a phenomenal quarterback and running game the last few years, they've had some really good linemen. They had the Nowinski kid. And when you lose a kid like that, who's a legitimate, probably D2 or higher player, just a great, big physical kid, you lose two players because he was a stud on offense and a star on defense. And so you lose 2-3 of those kids, and that really changes the complexion of your team. I think it's the difference between being good and consistent from year to year and maybe being that step closer to elite's probably too strong of a word, but that's kind of the category they had been in the last few years with their battles with Amherst and Stratford, and so it'll be interesting to see down the road with Wittenberg.
Let me ask you real quickly. You talk about scores. When you were coaching, did you do that? Did you look at scores, and when you look at opponents that are coming up and say, hey, this team, we may have played them earlier in the season, and do you kind of take a dive into that from time to time?
I think the scores are kind of your first impression, right? Like when you're on the bus, even when it was at West, when you're on the bus ride from Tom Field back to West, the scores are populating because it always took us forever to get out of there. So the coaches on the bus are kind of, did you see this score? That? So that first reaction is the score of that game, and you know who they played the week before, what the other scores have been in the conference. So that is. But the reality is, if it's somebody who you're playing in the near future, you start watching the film, and that's really what tells the tale. I think we're going to learn that this week in the conference. What we talked before we went on air, that whole Eau Claire North, Menominee, Eau Claire North, New Richmond, and then Marshfield in both of them. So I think those scores are always very interesting, but then you watch Eau Claire North on film, and it's kind of it's not what you thought when you look at the score. So I think, yes, it's your first impression, but I think that the truth always lies in the tape.
Marathon fell to Auburndale. That was a CWC-Large versus a CWC-Small, but very tight. They were in the same division last year. They played each other in the playoffs in Level 1, had a very tight game. It was a tight game until the final play of the first half. It was 17-14. Then Auburndale would score to make it 24-14, and then the Eagles would add 3 more scores in the second half to win 45-14, a game that Tom Weaver had the call on right here on 98.9 WXCO last Friday night. Colton Weiler of Auburndale, 24 rushes, 158 yards and 2 scores. Blake Robb, the quarterback, was 9 of 16, 170 yards and a touchdown. True Thurs, Marathon quarterback, has had a couple of good games throwing the football, 10 of 17 for 118 yards and a score. Garrett Bracewell, 5 receptions, 79 yards and a touchdown as well. This is an Auburndale team. When you look, we're going to talk about coming up this week. There's some big games in this conference. We're not going to spoil it quite yet, but in the CWC Small, very, very impressive. They've been building the last number of years. I think they won the battle up front as the small division school against the large division school. And for Marathon, second straight week where True Thurs has been able to throw the ball pretty well, but he's had some, and I say but the team has had some issues running and also defending against the run. They had a big deficit in the rush numbers last week when they came back from Pittsville. Again, I think there's some underlying stats that are concerning for the Red Raiders, and on the other end, Auburndale, I think, is looking like a very competitive and maybe even a team that can compete to win that CWC Small, even with Edgar in that league.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points here. That thing I'd point out, we know Thurs is a heck of an athlete, and this is the second week that Bracewell's actually been a nice target for him too. Good for the two of them, good for Marathon, but also a pretty easy thing to scout when you're looking to stop Marathon. That's kind of their bread and butter, their connection there. But I would say when you look at stats and compare wins and losses or whatever, maybe there's a trend there, right? Because we talked about Marathon and Auburndale last year, where those games have been pretty quick or very close. Last year, Marathon kind of had them and then lost them in there, but to start this year, it does look like Auburndale maybe have taken a step forward in the offseason, and Marathon either it's kind of maybe they'll surprise us down the road, but maybe stayed in the same place or maybe even took a small step backwards.
Also, it was Spencer Columbus beating Pittsville 28-22. Spencer Columbus 1-1. Pittsville, a couple of very tough losses in the first 2 weeks. They lost a 20-point lead at Marathon last week, and here, this was probably the most exciting finish in the area last week. Pittsville first rallied from a 20-6 deficit after 3 quarters, took a 22-20 lead on a 10-yard Dalton Dar touchdown reception and 2-point conversion with 1:44 left in the game, but Spencer Columbus responded with a 7-yard Jack Haper touchdown run in the final moments to pull out the win. Haper finished with 130 yards rushing. Dawson Luther has been very strong for Pittsville for a number of years, had 115 yards. That's a significant win for Spencer Columbus. They had a really good run a few years back, and then they've kind of really struggled. For them to get that W obviously is important. You want to win that crossover as the large school division. And for Pittsville, again, they're the CWC Small school against CWC Large, and they had 2 games where they could taste it, but ultimately they're 0-2, and that's a tough way to start.
Yeah, it's there's a big difference between 1-1 and 0-2 mentally, right? As you go into conference play, and great for Spencer Columbus to kind of get that win to be 1-1, and Pittsville, we'll see if they bounce back.
Amherst beat Shiocton 49-20. Amherst 2-0 on the young season. Shiocton 0-2. Michael Gladowski of Amherst, and sometimes Amherst, the pass game is hit and miss. He had a very good night throwing the football, 11 of 16, 138 yards and 2 touchdowns, and limited number numbers that I was able to get, but Amherst is always going to be there. I mean, they have been such a consistent program. I thought for them had a little bit of a dip a year ago. They almost beat Whitburn in the playoffs, however, but I got a sense that Amherst is going to be, definitely in the mix. And when you look at it, maybe Whitburn, who knows, maybe taking a half step backward. We'll wait and see on that. But for somebody to try and challenge Stratford, it may be Amherst.
Yeah, I mean, I think year in and year out, that's what you expected it to be, or expect it to be, and it really wasn't. I don't know if Amherst had some injuries last year, or a class that came through that was a little smaller, but they definitely seem to be on the right track and kind of trending towards that being a really important game down the road.
Loyal Greenwood shut down Neillsville Granton 39-0. Loyal Greenwood now 1-0, and Neillsville Granton 0-2. I'm going to ask you to bring out the CWC Small now. Going to go off the go to the CWC Small next, and we'll talk about that and a couple of more crossover games. And we could have put them under CWC-Large, but since the CWC Small schools won the next two, we're talking about that in this bracket of the show. Iola Scandinavia 46-29 at Wyoega Fremont. Again, I thought we talked a little bit about this last week, that this would be one of the more interesting games, and it truly was a very entertaining football game. Big numbers offensively, and Iola actually pulled away late to earn the win. It was a pretty tight game for 3 quarters. Jensen Rice of the T-Birds, 8 of 10 passing, 112 yards and a touchdown. Great numbers passing, but that was nothing compared to what he did on the ground. He had 29 rushes, 294 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Ryan Campert, you think 294 yards rushing, there's no room for anybody else to rush the football, but Ryan Campert had 21 rushes for 174 yards and 3 touchdowns. 485 yards rushing as a team for Iola. 597 yards total offense. Good numbers for Wyoega Fremont. Dawson Lind, 17 rushes, 170 yards, 3 touchdowns. Cameron Zilke, 15 rushes, 129 yards and a touchdown. 313 yards rushing as a team for Iola. It's hard to imagine that much rushing yardage. I mean, it almost feels like it's mathematically impossible, because when you're running the ball, the clock usually keeps running. But, 485 yards and 313 yards, that's 900 and...
Right about 800. Exactly.
798 yards rushing combined.
Yeah, and for there to have been almost 80 points scored on top of it. If you're going to rush for 800, there's been a lot of really big runs in that one. Kind of a horse race back and forth. Probably a really fun game to watch. But these are matchups we kind of talked about last year. It is Wyoega taking a small step forward and turning the corner, and I think Iola Scandinavia had something to say about that.
Yes, I think that CWC Small is going to be interesting with Edgar, with Auburndale, with Iola. I think they've all, we talked at the beginning about teams that maybe you have some questions about. I think those 3 schools have kind of answered questions early. It's going to make for a very interesting CWC Small when these teams get together. And actually, I think in terms of this week's action, some of the best games are in the CWC Small, we will talk about later in the program. Abbotsford beat Colby. I think that was a very interesting win. Abby, CWC Small against Colby, CWC-Large. And again, that's a big rivalry game. Last year, Colby went to Abbotsford and won by a significant margin. This year, Abbotsford went to Colby and won 21-6 to go 2-0. Colby 0-2. Christian Fuentes had 21 carries, 95 yards. Irvin Aguilera, 6 of 10 passing, 98 yards and 2 touchdowns for Abby. Chase Heeg of Colby, 12 rushes, 96 yards and a touchdown, as they were able to avoid the shutout with 14 seconds left in the game. But I think, again, you talk about another team in the CWC Small that's going to put a marker here early. That's Abbotsford. That's a good win for them.
It is. I think I'd like to have those Vegas numbers on this one. I think if a lot of people to put money on Colby preseason in this, just historically, right? That program and where they've been. But what I've learned about Abbotsford and doing this show for 2 years now is they're going to run the football and they're going to control. They're never going to score a ton of points, but they're going to control the game. And I think in this CWC Small and a lot of these opponents, if you can run the ball, if you can control the clock a little bit, you're going to give yourself a chance to win.
2 teams that are CWC Small but used to be CWCC, Central Wisconsin Catholic Conference in the day, had tough weeks. Opener for Pacelli, second game for Assumption. Pacelli lost to Brookfield Academy 48-14. Bryce Flaker of Pacelli had 15 rushes, 80 yards. Jacob Williams was 9 of 14 passing, 55 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Added 8 tackles on defense. Assumption ran into an always tough Pep and Alma team. losing 36-0. Wiley Cornwell, 13 rushes, 67 yards. And it's not my position to give advice to anybody, but I do wonder, again, now at the CWC, small has these real powerhouses in it. And I know that sometimes these private schools are having some enrollment numbers and also numbers for kids coming out. Again, I've seen what happens to Newman right now. I've been around Newman so much. I got to wonder, maybe at some point those schools do think about it, because it's last year were both tough years for Assumption and Pacelli. Pacelli made the playoffs a couple of years ago very nicely, and I think Assumption as well. So obviously they still have very good football programs and very good coaches, but at the same time, boy, I think they're in a tough situation right now.
It is, and this is an interesting question. I'm sure we'll talk to Coach Micklig at some point too. Like, what's the magic number in that when you look at your program from year to year? Like, what is the right time? The one thing about Pacelli and Assumption compared to like when you go north or northeast or northwest is they're still in a pretty centralized location where there's always going to be 11-man competition for them to play. I think in some of those areas it drives it a little bit more. But like, what is the magic number? Is it 30? Is it 25? Is it I don't know the answer. So I'm interested to hear, like, as a program, as a school district, what are the other factors that go into making that decision and what's best for your program and your students and families?
And finally, it was Roscoe coming off their big Week 1 win. They were brought back to earth against Glenwood City, falling 48-0. So Roscoe now 0-1. We'll talk about the Valley and the Great Northern coming up a little bit later on, but we're going to come back in 1 minute and have our coach guest for this week, the head football coach of the Stratford Tigers, Jason Tubbs. Again, one of the big wins last week as they knocked off Edgar. So we'll talk to the head Tiger coming up next. This is the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by KS Construction on 98.9 WXCO. The Wausau West High School football team kicks off conference play this Friday night, traveling to Eau Claire to take on the North Huskies. Hear all the exciting action live on 98.9 WXCO, online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app, starting with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. Wausau West football on WXCO is brought to you by the Cloverbell Credit Union, Red Robin Restaurant, Sun Printing, Domtar, the Wausau West Athletic Department, North Star Restoration, K5 Construction, and Coast to Coast Marketing. It's Wausau West at Eau Claire North in Wisconsin Valley Conference football. Friday night, starting with the pregame show at 6:35, opening kickoff at 7 on 98.9 WXCO, online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back. It is the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. Online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO, and on the Civic Media app. And again, don't forget, if you missed the show or missed any of our previous shows, you can get it as a podcast, either at bullfallsradio.com or by subscribing wherever you get your podcasts. Apple Podcasts. I forget the other ones. I'm not up on all the technology, but we are on all those podcast sites. So just subscribe and follow us, and you can get the show as a podcast each and every week. And every week we get a chance to talk to both a student-athlete guest and a coach guest. Coming up a little bit later on, our student-athlete guest for this week from Newman Catholic, senior lineman Evan Groene. But first, our coach guest for this week, and from the Stratford Tigers, coming off a big win at Edgar last week. We're very happy to welcome back to the program Coach Jason Tubbs. And Coach, first of all, thanks for spending a few minutes with us.
Hey, sounds good. Is that podcast money like the Kelsey brothers?
You caught my little grift here to get people to do that. No, it's all man. I would love to be the Kelsey podcasters like that, but
wow.
And also, I'd also like to have the trophy case at Stratford High School. But this year, 2024, let's talk about the Stratford Tigers. And I was saying to Coach Foster earlier that Stratford football probably likes nothing better than winning at Camp Randall Stadium. But then second is probably walking off the field victorious in Edgar. Is there any truth to that?
That two places tough to get wins, I'll tell you that. And you got to be prepared, whether you're down at Camp Randall or if you're at Edgar's Field. And Jerry Sins has done it for 50 years, and there's not a lot of wins from opponents on that field. And so for us to get one, and this year it's hats off to our hardworking staff and players, and really proud of them after Friday night's win.
Looking at the numbers, it would look like an old-fashioned football battle. I mean, in terms of nobody putting up huge offensive numbers, nobody putting up triple digits in terms of rushing yards individually, nobody putting up huge numbers catching the football. I saw some tackle numbers that were very, very impressive in that football game. Was it a dose of some old-fashioned football last Friday night?
For sure. I think if you ever look up in Wisconsin high school football history, if you look up Smash Mouth football, you're going to see Stratford Edgar pictures. It's just our two teams have played physical for years and really set the tone for our season. Last year I thought when we got beat by them at home that they were definitely more physical than us, and it kind of prepared us to be more physical. And kids that are now seniors, they weren't used to that physicality, and then all of a sudden they showed how you can be physical. And so it's always a great measuring stick playing against them. Being non-conference this year again, our kids go, win or lose from that game. I feel we always get better because we know now what it takes to be a state caliber team.
I love what you said there, win or lose. And this is probably one of the, maybe not few, but a handful of games in our area that you can say that coming out of this game with a loss is not the end of the world, right? Getting to the end of the season with a loss on your record. What is it like? You've been there a long time now, and were part of it before you were the head coach. What is it like preparing for this game each year? I mean, as a head football coach, I know what it's like to prepare week in and week out for games, but with this rivalry, what's different the week you play Edgar that only happens the week you play Edgar?
Yeah, you better have a head on a swivel, that's for sure, and you got to be locked in because they're going to hit you on every play at every angle. Sometimes even after the whistle. So getting kids ready for that, knowing that you may make one wrong step, one wrong read, and all of a sudden they're down the sidelines. And every play seems to be tested. There's sometimes you can't take downs off in the Stratford Edgar games.
When you look at your team now, just generally, you're off, got a couple games under your belt. And again, one of the outstanding aspects of Stratford football, and one reason we wanted to talk to you early is because the first two games, even before you start your conference season, you faced two of the top programs here in central Wisconsin. You had Mosinee in week 1 and then Edgar in week 2. What have you found out about this version of the Stratford Tigers? Maybe the first question I'll ask, what is different about this 2024 team than maybe the last couple of years for Stratford?
Yeah, last couple of seasons, we relied heavily on Gavin Leonard and Kohler Kilty, and this year, I think it's going to be more of a group effort. You have, Jack Tubbs coming back at quarterback, and he can run the ball, but running backs Reed Miller, Brooks Vanderhoof, and Jet Shaner, Caleb Wrench, they get their chances to kind of maybe shine on Friday night more, and you add in Colton Bright and Xander Curtis, and you got a group of athletes that, Alec Chapel as well. You just got a group of athletes that you can spread the ball around. And, I kind of make it similar to kind of like the Green Bay Packers. You don't have a number one receiver, but boy, you got 5 or 6 athletes that at any time could take the ball to into the house.
So, Coach, I was blessed with daughters, so I never had the opportunity to coach, to have sons or to coach. I always had my daughters on the sideline with me. What's it like having your son under center like that and growing up a coach's kid and on the field and around Stratford football? What's it like having him out there and having that relationship both at practice every night, at home afterwards? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a little surreal because I'm usually harder on him than on other kids. But to give him credit, he works really hard in the weight room in the off season, so it makes my job easy. Last year he was still kind of learning a little bit, but this year, knowing the offense and defense, he's way more comfortable. You can just tell he's just playing and having fun with his buddies. I also learn a lot about the program, so he gets from an angle that, hey, are we lifting weights tonight? You kind of forgot about that, and things that kind of keep me on the rails and remind me, being in that player situation. And, And it kind of goes both ways. Like, hey, you're captain now. The locker room's got to be cleaner. So there's ways to. It's been a lot of fun. Last year watching him on the sidelines winning a state championship as a starting quarterback and making that historic drive to get down there and scoring position, and it's kind of like, is this really happening? So there's some great things about it. There's some things that makes me nervous as the dad part of it. And I always have to deal with my wife to make sure I'm keeping them in safe.
Again, we're talking to Jason Tumps, the head football coach at Stratford High School, here on the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. You mentioned the athletes, and that's something we hear about from Stratford for year in and year out. And the thing about that, it's not an accident. It takes a lot of hard work. I mean, you do have some kids that probably have natural ability and natural athletic ability, but you mentioned the weight room. You mentioned, having that discipline to go to the weight room all the time in the off season, be ready. That would be the foundation of a lot of the success that Stratford has been able to have, not just in football, but in other sports as well.
Oh, absolutely. I think we are blessed with kids that want to compete at 2 or 3 sports. I look at Carter Lewick, who was a state runner-up in a championship in Division III wrestling. You look at Jet Shaner and Colton Bright, and Mason Miller and these other kids that got on the podium for state track as the 4x1 state champs. And you just see all these other kids, Jack and Brady Berg being top tier baseball players, playing at high levels and looking to play in college. You have kids that want to, participate in Stratford, play 2-3 sports, but not only excel in their favorite sport, but to really contribute and help out in those other sports. And it kind of pushes each other to get in the weight room and work harder. And it's really fun to see it develop since I've been here for 22 seasons.
Let me ask you before I let Coach Foster back in, because when we talk to coaches from, either mid-sized schools or the small schools, and the need for multi-sport athletes, over the years, what's been asked of a lot of these student athletes in terms of off-season and how coaches basically have to work together to make sure everybody has their, room to help their programs and help the kids develop as well. Does it work really well at Stratford? Because I would imagine there's a lot of competition because, again, there's a lot of programs at Stratford that do exceptionally well. How has that changed over the years? Maybe was there a little more maneuverability in the past where there was a little time off, a little bit more time off, but it feels like right now in the off season there is so much going on for the kids in terms of trying to become better athletes in whatever sport they're involved in. And with these schools the size of Stratford, where you have multi-sport athletes, how difficult is that?
Yeah, it's definitely, their time seems to be taken more and more. And I'm blessed to have the head basketball coach, Kurt Schmidt, coaching middle school football for me. In years past, I had Joe Schwabe and Adam Davison, our wrestling coaches, respectively, very good quality wrestling coaches as on our football staff. And Marshall Lehman was the baseball coach up until this year and on staff, and so they get how much their time demanded. We're all sharing the same athletes, and I really think the coaching in the state, they have to figure, in other schools have to figure that out. And I think we're really blessed to have a administration team to support our kids, making sure that all the sports have equal access to all the weight room and try to line up schedules. Like we do 7-on-7 on Sunday nights, so that way varsity basketball can do their summer league on Wednesday nights. So you always try to work around these athletes and coaches' schedules for the betterment of Stratford football and Stratford Tigers.
Yeah, you're spot on with that, Coach. Changing roles from being a head football coach to an athletic director, that's such a big thing. It's really easy to talk a good game about encouraging our athletes to play in multiple sports, but then when we give summer expectations that are league 3 nights a week and the weight room and camps and contact days and Legion baseball's playing 100 games and all that. It's tough. So you guys are doing a great job. Shifting gears a little bit, talk about the CWC-Large. What when you look at your schedule, the remainder or heading into conference play now, who are the ones that stick out? Chad and I have done a lot of talking about these early scores and what it means and who's up and who's down. What are you expecting in the conference this year?
Well, there's some interesting scores looking at, the Colby Abbey game and the Marathon and Auburndale, playing each other, and Spencer Columbus playing Auburndale, and, Iola beating Wyoming Fremont, so we know Wyoming Fremont, they're kind of an up-and-coming team, a playoff team from last year, and you also have Amherst, they're 2-0, and Wittenberg-Burnwood is still, hanging around, and so, I'm always looking at, to me, being now in the CWC-Large here for quite a while, you always figure Amherst was in the mix. No matter what they do, they have a staff. Those kids work hard, and never look past Wittenberg-Burnwood because they always seem to have athletes around every corner.
Also, this year, your success has cost you a little bit. You're moved up in terms of the divisions. What are your thoughts about that generally? I guess, number one, the whole idea of this. Jason, what is the title again?
Competitive balance.
Competitive balance. Your general thoughts about it and the idea that, hey, you've been so successful that you've been moved up a division.
Well, I just, I look at schools like Fenimore Wrestling, and Stratford Football and Darlington and, schools that are public schools. We don't have any open enroll kids on our roster. We don't have any kids that moved in this year that all of a sudden are sophomores playing, softball or baseball. It's hard. It's hard to see an enrollment of 272 might have to go against ones that are 450, here coming up. And I understand what the WIA is trying to do, trying to make it balanced, but I also look at, schools in larger schools that are drawing from 100,000 kids and then keeping their enrollment at a certain level. So, I guess time will tell and see how well it goes. We're always under the impression we scrimmage DC Everest and Wausau West. There's no schools bigger than that. We're going to play in Division 5. So just go out and hit them as hard as you can, just like you would anybody.
Are you keeping an eye on the computers this year? I remember last year we talked about that when you had to go to Auburndale, how that was kind of odd. It was interesting talking to you at that time. Again, that's been one of the changes recently. After an off season, and you went in there and you took care of business against Auburndale last year. How do you feel about that change as well that we've seen the last couple of years?
Yeah, I didn't understand how a team that didn't win their conference had the same record that us, and we are conference champs, defending state champs, doesn't get the 1 seed. I just don't understand it. And I look at Edgar getting a 2 seed last year too, and you kind of figure they're going to, roll as well. I don't know the whole process. I wish they would maybe have a couple coaches that, are retired recently that might have help weigh in on the historical perspective of it. I know travel's a big thing too. I get that part of it, but another option would be to maybe go back to a neutral site in level 3. But that might help alleviate a lot of the issues. But I know it's tough to get places that want to host when they're not playing too.
Right. No, I think those are all really good points. I really like what you said too about I don't hate the idea of the computers. That used to be one of my least favorite things every year was making the playoffs and then going sitting in the room with all those coaches and who preach all year long that their kids do not make any excuses and then spend 2 hours making an excuse for every loss on their schedule. But I really like what you said too, like have the computer do the lion's share of the work, but let's let some human beings look at it before we release it and say, does this make sense? Can we get a board of, like you said, retired coaches, Hall of Fame coaches, whatever you want, to say this just doesn't make sense and let's just flip-flop these two or make this change going into that. So I would agree with you. I think it's a work in progress, but there's definitely still some work to be done.
Yeah, and I mean, there's some great guys like Caltake has come to mind. I mean, that guy, he still comes down to my room and saying, "You got to run that trap better." And he knows he still knows the teams and the coaches in the area, and there's a lot. I think there's a way to maybe make it a little bit better, and hopefully with this competitive balance now, who's moving up, who moves down. So when you take 3 teams up from Division 6 and you put them up in 5, now who's going to be sliding down to 6? So those schools thinking, now 6 is going to be easier. Well, wait a second. Now a team that was pretty small in D5 now is the largest in D6. So it's going to be interesting.
Agreed.
Yep, that's one word that's always, when it comes to our high school football, is interesting. And again, really enjoy seeing you play really good non-conference opponents to get ready for an always tough CWC-Large. Jason, any final questions or comments for Coach Stubbs?
Yeah, my last question would be, because I've never been in that situation, coming off of back-to-back state championships, some returners, some new kids getting their feet wet for the first time. When you talk about goals for the season after back-to-back state championships, where do you guys start? Like, what are your goals for the season?
So, since I've been head coach, we always have the same goals: is to win the conference and make a deep run in playoffs. And sometimes that it works out, and sometimes it doesn't. And so that way, there's never pressure about it, because they know every year, doesn't matter if they're sitting in that room as a freshman or a senior, they know the goal is to win conference and make a deep run in the playoffs. So what does that mean? Get play in November. If you're playing in November, you're doing something right.
That is exactly right. Head coach Jason Tubbs of the state champion Stratford Tigers, coming off their win against Edgar last week, getting set for Spencer Columbus on the road this week. Coach Tubbs, again, really appreciate your time. Best of luck this week. Best of luck throughout the season. Perhaps we'll get you back maybe in November. That's always the goal, right? So hopefully get a chance to talk to you again. And again, really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Coach. Good luck this week.
Take care.
That is Coach Jason Tubbs of the Stratford Tigers. We're going to come back, continue our recaps of last week's action. We'll talk about the Wisconsin Valley Conference coming up in 1 minute. It's the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. On Friday night, the Marathon High School football team begins CWC-Large play, traveling to Loyal Greenwood. Hear all the exciting action live on the Sports 2 stream of BullFallsRadio.com and the Civic Media Radio app, starting with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7 p.m. Marathon football on WXCO is brought to you by Marathon Park City, Four Seasons Screen Printing, Brickners of Little Chicago, County Materials, the People's State Bank, Marathon Cheese, the Dirks Group, Marathon Family Dentistry, the Marathon Athletic Club, Fisher Transportation, Morgan Sand and Gravel, Rip Falls Fabrication, and BS Taxidermy. It's Marathon at Loyal Greenwood in high school football. Friday, starting with the pregame show at 6:35 and the opening kickoff at 7, live on the Sports 2 stream of BullFallsRadio.com and the Civic Media app. The game will also air on tape delay following Wausau West football on 98.9 WXCO. And welcome back. Chad Holmes along with Jason Foster. It is the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO, online at bullfallsradio.com, mobile devices, and Alexa by searching WXCO, presented by K5 Construction. And let's continue to recap the action from last week. And we talked about the CWC-Large and the CWC Small in our first segment, but let's talk about the Wisconsin Valley Conference. And last week we spoke about how the Valley had some issues with the Big Rivers in week number 1, where Wausau West was the only victorious team. Here this week, struggles continue. And again, it's one of those situations where the matchups have something to do with it as well. But the Big Rivers, I think, kind of putting a flag down that when the playoffs do begin, and often we'll see Big River schools, Valley schools, and some Fox Valley schools part of this Division I bracket, it's going to be tough, I think, for some of these Valley teams to have high seeds and perhaps have even a home game in level number 1 just based on some of these results.
Yeah, I think the one thing that the and we'll learn more obviously in the next few weeks, but the one thing that the Valley might have going for it is that some of the best schools in the Big Rivers don't go Division I.
You're right.
That Rice Lake
yeah.
and Menominee will go D2
Yeah.
and D3, or actually they'll both be D2 with Rice Lake getting bumped up this year as well. So, yeah, I think the scores kind of were interesting again, and they'll continue to be moving forward into conference play.
I will say a couple of those D1 teams do look like they're going to be a handful, Chippewa Falls and Hudson. So I think there'll be last year Hudson was Chippewa Falls was an 8. The way they're playing early, I don't think they're going to be an 8 this year.
I would agree with that.
But let's talk about the action. Stevens Point coming off that week 1 loss against Chippewa Falls, and you knew it was not a good spot for Superior. A long trek on a Thursday night, and Stevens Point was able to defeat Superior 43-0. It was 29-0 after 1, 43-0 at halftime. Grant shot on 6 rushes, 105 yards and a touchdown, and 6 of 6 passing for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. I'm sure he did not play much in the second half, but that young man, again, had a terrific year last season, and despite the loss, Stevens Point is still a team that's going to be one to, going into the conference season, still the team to beat.
Yep, I think my takeaway from this game is it confirms that Superior still has a long ways to go, and that Spash is still a good football team.
Marshfield fell at Menominee in a game that was ended because of weather in the third quarter. It was 35-10 at halftime. The game did get into the third, but in the end, no scoring in the third quarter. Menominee 2-0, Marshfield 0-2, 35-10. Quarterback Brady Johnson had 5 first-half touchdown passes for Menominee, and they were some big ones, 80, 59, 48, 30, and then just 9 yards. And, Marshfield gave up only 7 points in week 1. The offense continues to be, I think, a bit of a question mark. But boy, if their defense is carved up like that, that's bad news for Marshfield, isn't it?
Yeah, if you complete passes like that, you definitely have some issues on the back end as well as your pass rush. One thing we know about Menominee is they've had some outstanding quarterbacks, and they appear to have another one in their stable. I think the other big, you touched on, and the other big thing for Marshfield is they've scored 16 points in 2 weeks, and that was a little bit of a trend for them last year as well. Very low scoring, even the games that they won against some of the lesser teams like Appleton West and East, they probably didn't score as many points against them as some of the others. So this is another one of those that we looked at, right? New Richmond was 7-6 last week, and then New Richmond really hands it to Eau Claire North, who played Menominee really competitive the week before. So it'll be interesting.
Rice Lake, you talk about a team that looks really, really good. I mean, and when we talk about Everest here in a moment, that game against Everest looks even better now for Rice Lake, and they took it to Rapids 44-0 to go 2-0. Rapids now 0-2. 247 yards rushing for Rice Lake, nothing unusual. 6.7 yards per carry. 22-0 after 1, 36-0 at halftime. Again, that is a program that won a state championship. Hasn't lost a game in about a year and a half now. They're going to be tough, and for Rapids, it's hard to put any kind of silver lining on that one.
Yeah, I think the thing that really sticks out, like a lot of these games were weather shortened last week, so the scores probably could have been more lopsided than they were. But the thing that really sticks out to me in this one is 22-0 after 1 quarter. I think that speaks to complete dominance by one team early, one team being more ready to play than the other. So I think that's kind of that's the tale of that game.
One of the most impressive performances, I think, last week was DC Everest, a game that was supposed to be played on Thursday. They actually got on the bus. They were heading on over, then turned around, came back home, and then came back for a 12 noon kickoff on Friday, and they beat a good River Falls team 51-26. Blake Bankston, 27 rushes, 264 yards. Reed Frame, 12 rushes, 105 yards and a touchdown. 397 yards rushing as a team for DCE. 8.3 yards per carry. Logan George, great quarterback. He didn't have to throw much. 5 of 9, 43 yards. River Falls did put up some yardage. 264 yards passing, 153 on the ground, 417 yards of total offense. But watching that game, DC Everest just won the battle up front when they had the football.
Yeah, I think that's kind of maybe what we're going to see out of Everest. I mean, in the past few years when they've had success, I get it, new coach, new offensive scheme, but in the past 5 years when they've had success, they've run the football very well. And not only did Bankston rush for 264 yards, unless he was lying on his social media, which I doubt he was, he had 6 touchdowns. I mean, most kids don't go a whole season without scoring 6 touchdowns. Yeah. And I think the question mark to me in this one is, we know that River Falls can throw the football, obviously 417 total yards. How good is River Falls this year? We know they've been solid in the past, but I think that'll be an interesting one to keep the eye on when you look at the fact that there's Menominee and Rice Lake and Hudson and Chippewa Falls. It could be a rough goal for River Falls this year.
And they did have a little trouble against Rapids in week 1, pulled away late. So, I think that is another team to keep an eye on. Game that we saw last Friday night over at Tom Field. Wausau West fell to Hudson 35-22. Warriors led 16-14 at halftime, but then bang, 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 3 touchdowns for Hudson to take the lead in the third quarter. Backup quarterback Cooper Adair came on and played very well. 8 of 10 passing, 67 yards, 16 rushes, 88 yards, and 2 touchdowns. The starting quarterback, Steele Homey, had 4 rushes, 64 yards, and a score before leaving in the first quarter. 279 yards rushing on 36 carries. They just moved the ball on the ground. Joe Gravine, the Warrior quarterback, was 17 of 30 for 212 yards. Couple of touchdowns and a pick. Cooper DePoit ran the ball very well for West. 27 rushes, 137 yards. Marcus McDonald, 8 catches, 90 yards, and a touchdown. I thought both offenses did some good work. I think both defenses probably feel like they have some work to do after that one.
Yeah, this was really a game of ebb and flow. I thought that Hudson came out early and kind of looked like they had a leg up in this one, and West kind of took 2 or 3 possessions there right before the half and kind of turned things around and looked like they had some momentum going into the second half. And then I think Hudson made some really nice adjustments on halftime as far as how they were going to attack the West defense. And I think they got those 2 scores early in the second half, which kind of put it out of reach a little bit. West definitely had some opportunities late, but the bright spots were most certainly getting Cooper DePoit back and how he ran the ball. And I tell you what, the Warriors are looking forward to getting Jack back at quarterback, but Joe Gravine did some really nice things throwing the football Friday night and definitely put a lot of things on tape for Eau Claire North to think about this week.
It's interesting seeing West throw as much as they have. I have not seen that in a number of years. And
what was most interesting to me was, Cooper DePoit still had 27 rushing attempts, so that was a very Warrior-like rushing game, but to also have 30 passing attempts in the same game was something. And he had some tough luck, too, with a couple drops on some big plays in the second half that certainly could have made the game closer and more interesting down the stretch.
I will say, though, there were a couple of drops on the other side on passes. The defense probably should have grabbed.
Oh, my goodness.
But he's a young quarterback, and those are learning experiences.
And take absolutely nothing away from Hudson. I should know his name, but number 18's got to be up for one of the best players in this conference on both sides of the ball. And it took me a minute to realize that wasn't their starting quarterback did pretty much whatever he wanted when he was in there, and then his backup came in and did even more. So, Hudson, if they continue to grow as the season goes on, they're going to be tough to handle.
And the 2 new Wisconsin Valley Conference teams in football are the Eau Claire North Huskies and the Eau Claire Memorial Old Abe's, and both those squads had a bit of a rough time of it last week. New Richmond defeated Eau Claire North 35-7. New Richmond now 2-0. North is 0-2. North got 96 yards, 18 rushes from Levante Bean. And then Chippewa Falls beat Eau Claire Memorial 66-7. And I got to say that the defense for Eau Claire Memorial saw them play against Hudson. And welcome back. It's hour number 2 of the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by K5 Construction, a family-owned and operated custom builder that stands out from the rest for its commitment to quality and excellence. From design and planning to the final construction, K5 Construction delivers superior results on every project. You can check them out online, www.buildwithk5, and it's the number 5, buildwithk5.com. And with former Wausau West head football coach Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes, and very happy to welcome our student-athlete guest for this week from the Newman Catholic Cardinals, offensive lineman and defensive lineman, Evan Groene. Evan, thank you for coming on over.
Absolutely. Awesome.
Yeah, have you get a little bit closer to that microphone.
Sorry, awesome to be here.
It's fantastic to have you here as well. And before we start digging in deep, I want to talk about last week's game because it was such an interesting game. It was such a good win for your team. I mean, you had to face so much adversity adversity. You lost your quarterback, Quincy Fender, with a significant injury in the third quarter, led to a big delay. You already had been missing your backup quarterback. So you're left without a quarterback, and at the time it was a one-score game. It was very much a football game, and at that point, I think the opponent, the Phillips Loggers, basically knew you're going to have to run the football, and that put it on the lineman's shoulders. And I wanted to ask you at that moment, and obviously, you feel for your teammate. It's a very difficult situation. What was going through the mind of you and your teammates, and especially the linemen who are experienced? You got 3 starting linemen back this year. What was the mindset for you guys?
I guess, it was just kind of this like pressure situation that we were in. And me and Callow and Greg, we kind of just went to the side and we went, we're going to have Tristan Fisher came in at running back for a little bit. So we had some new guys coming in, and we just knew we had to like keep it simple and then just run our offense. So we were just trying to keep everybody up and just trying to keep moving, and especially to score on that drive. I think we were in with like the 20-yard line or something like that. So it was really important that we punch that in and make it a 2-score game, and then try to carry the momentum with us.
It's real interesting when the coach got in that drive, and in fact, I remember it was the 17-yard line, and nothing against you there, but it was just, I just remember thinking you had to score on that drive. You had to score, and you actually did score, but it was called back, and you had to do it all over again. Again, it just felt like there were challenges thrown out there time and time again, and for that quarter and a half, I thought you guys executed as well as possible. Was that the feeling as well, that you guys really dug in and proved something to yourselves here early in the new season?
It was really awesome to just see kind of everybody go around and just kind of come together, and especially that quarter and a half, like you said, it was just awesome, just pedal to the metal, and just everything was clicking. We had that one touchdown call back, but then it was a play after we scored again. So we were getting a little bit of adversity, but we kept overcoming it. We just kept pushing through and making play after play.
So in that instance, last Saturday, it's all emotion, right? Like the guy who's been your guy all summer long, all off season, is not your guy anymore.
Yeah.
So now the dust is settled and the emotion's gone, and he's not back probably this week. So what is it like now? Like when you're giving it more thought and you guys are preparing for this week, what emotions, thoughts, like how have you and your teammates communicated? Like now that you have a whole week to plan without having them there, what's the mindset?
It's really nice because Griff, he played running back, but he was our kind of JV quarterback a little bit too. So Griff kind of has a good idea. He's got a good head on his shoulders for like knowing what a quarterback needs to do. So we're just kind of there to support him, help him make plays here and there. And the mindset is, Almond's a tough team, but just to keep pushing, and that we know we can win.
And that's Griffin Pent, for those folks out there who don't follow the Cards as closely as we do all the time. The running back / now quarterback for the Newman Catholic Cardinals. I want to talk a little bit more big picture now as we start the new year. You're just one game into the new season. A year ago, Newman came in with nobody starting. I mean, no starters returning at all in the position that they played in. And coming off a couple of state championships. And there's always, I think, that carryover for people say, oh, it's Newman Catholic. But last season, nobody was back. I mean, it was really, I thought, an amazing accomplishment for your team to be able to make the playoffs. You started off with a couple of really tough teams, including the eventual state champion. And then the rest of the season, in the regular season, you lost only one game, the game to Almond Bancroft. But this season, now, as I said, you're back. You have a number of other players that are back. You have your entire offensive line back, working together again. How is it different going into maybe the summer, going into training camp this year with that experience than it was maybe last year, where there were a lot of question marks around your team?
Yeah, I think last year it was all kind of like this big puzzle that we kind of put together as the year went on. And like Greg, Callow, and myself, our 3 linemen, we all kind of were never on the same. We were eventually, as the season went on the same page more. But for those first couple of games, we were really kind of like lost. The game felt really fast, especially to me. I just felt kind of really behind, and people were moving just crazy fast. And then going into this first game against Phillips, it kind of felt like for me, like everything kind of like slowed down a lot more, especially with I've been playing more. It felt like it slowed down a lot more, and it kind of like allowed me to just think before I like moved, and it kind of just made it all click together more. And then for like kind of moving into the season, our hope is to, kind of continue this undefeated record and We got some easier games in the schedule second half of the season, so hopefully we can just kind of get over this almond hill and then kind of
Don't give these guys bulletin board material here. They'll be tuned in and they'll say, hey, you go, no. But you're exactly right. Before I let Jason jump back in again, last season, was there a point where maybe it did come together for your guys? Because, again, early on, you did take a couple of shots to the chin very quickly.
Yeah.
Then you did have the game at Almond, and then you were put in a position where, the playoffs were looking a little bit iffy, even if you did run the table, but you were able to run the table. Was there a point last year where you felt like it was coming together for your group?
Yeah, I think it was definitely our homecoming game against Marion. We played really good that game. Our line just kind of started clicking for the first time. And then we kind of carried that throughout the whole year, especially I think after that week we had Wild Rose. And that was a really good week for us again. We kind of just started working together. And then we just kind of communicated more too. We just kind of just started working together.
Awesome. So Chad's done a great job this year through 3 weeks of bringing on linemen onto the show. I love
Sure.
it. And one of the things in kind of observing across the street at Wausau West through you guys' state championship runs and last year, the one thing I've really come to learn about 8-man football and the great teams that you guys had is sometimes those statistics were like video game numbers, like the rushing yards, the pass completions, the touchdowns, all this. The final scores were just amazing.
Yeah.
So we don't, especially in 8-man football, we don't hear a lot about the linemen. You've referenced Greg and Callow a couple times. Tell me about the role of the lineman in 8-man football and what's special and unique at Wausau Newman or Newman Catholic.
Yeah, you got to make sure.
Yeah, I know. I caught myself though.
So it's really special because I guess we're seeing a lot of like blitzes and stuff like that normally I guess I can't really compare because I haven't played 11-man.
Yep.
But I guess, you got to make your blocks. You got 3 guys instead of 5. So you got to have a strong 3. And every single guy has to, helmet on helmet is what Micklig's always talking about. So you got to be accountable and you got to always be like head on your shoulders or head on the look. And you're like looking out for like blitzers or anything coming in the gap.
What about being able to play the other side of the football?
Oh, yeah. I got to sorry. I was talking about something.
No.
Yeah.
This is a new question.
Yeah. Especially nose is kind of something that I'm getting used to this year. And that's kind of fun to grow into and just kind of learn how to play it. Because I think last year I was more playing end. So especially, you got to contain, especially for the ends. You got to make sure you can't let anything get past you. And then up the for nose, you got to clog up the gap and not let anything get through the middle.
The challenge of playing 2 ways. Newman Catholic, obviously, I mean, even before, you lost Quincy, I mean, the numbers are not great because you're a small school. And really, the amount of boys that you do have out for the team is a very impressive number because you only have about 100 kids in the school. That's boys and girls.
Yeah.
The opportunities that you get at Newman, because, I mean, this has got to be fantastically fun and a challenge to be able to play both ways, to be part of every aspect of the game at Newman. Could you talk a little bit about that opportunity that you get playing at Newman Catholic?
Yeah, it's special, because I guess I've been starting to play like my freshman and sophomore years. I was playing in varsity games when we would go up, and I don't know if I would be able to do that at Everett in school. So getting into those games late and just getting like varsity level experience early is something that I've always thought is like really unique with Newman and how we run our program. So that's always been really special to me. And then playing like both ways, it's awesome because you're tired after the game. It's tough, but you did it. Nobody else did it for you. So it's kind of this sense of like ownership and just getting the job done.
Yeah. And we talk about him a lot, and we will most certainly have him on the show at some point this year. Tell me about what it's like to play for Coach Micklig.
It's awesome. He's like a second dad to me. Just with all the stuff that he does for us players and in and out of the football program from day to day stuff at Newman. Just he really cares. It's like we're a big family. So that's just really been awesome for me. And then off season, he's always, helping out at practice, at weight room and stuff like that. So it's just been like this part of big family that I just love to be a part of.
Again, we're talking to Newman Catholic High School lineman senior Evan Groene here on the Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. Let's step away from the football for a moment. Talk about at school. What's your favorite class?
Favorite class? Probably this AP Calc probably.
Oh,
jeez.
I'm a math and science guy, so yeah.
fantastic. What is the we talked about the aspect of football at Newman Catholic. What about academically? Do you feel like you get as a small school? Do you feel like there's a lot more one-on-one and advantages to that as well?
Yeah, definitely. You get some more attention from teachers if you ever have some questions or stuff like that. Doors are always open if you have any help with an assignment that you're not quite getting. They're always there for you. And they're just like your friend. You can just go talk to them if you need any help with anything in school or just personal life stuff going on.
What do you like to do when you're away from football in the evenings? And I know football's a full-time thing and all that, but what do you like to, when you do have free time, what do you like to do?
Definitely like hang out with my friends, some video games probably here and there. But just kind of relaxing, hanging out with people I like to be around.
Are you involved in any other extracurricular activities at Newman?
Yeah, part of the ambassadors program, so we kind of go and do some public events, like public outreach stuff like that, and then part of NHS, so kind of also the same thing. Yeah. And then I was part of student council last year, but helping around at the school.
Do you have any ideas about going to college? Is that something you hope to do?
Definitely, yeah. Hope to go to college next year.
Have you had any ideas on either where you'd want to go or maybe a potential major? And again, when we ask this,
Sure.
it's a silly question because you do have the time to make up your mind, but is there any ideas on that?
Definitely want to get out of Wisconsin. That's like a big thing that I'm kind of looking into. So right now, my top three are probably University of Tennessee, University of Alabama, and then University of Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So football's done. What's the next thing for you? What's not done now? When football's done, what do you do when football season's over?
Just start lifting over the winter, and then I'll probably get a job, make some money for college, and then hopefully we can get baseball going in the spring, and then we can have a baseball team. That or I'll do some track this year again.
Do you have a favorite rival? Somebody you enjoy playing?
Definitely Almond.
Really?
Almond's a big one, yeah. I always like playing Almond.
Why would that be?
I just, I want some revenge from last year, especially. Yeah, I just feel like it's a big game always because it's basically conference championship week too.
Very early.
Yeah, the pressure's on to perform, especially early in the season where we're still kind of getting into the swing of things and running offense and defense.
I love it when our players come on each week and talk about their teammates. So tell me a little bit about your teammates, things that maybe just people listening to Chad or watching the games might not know, and what makes it such an enjoyable experience.
Sure. Everybody just kind of gets along. Damian Pent, Cooper Gould, gonna give some shout outs here.
Yep.
Griffin Pence, he's an awesome guy to just talk to and be around. He's always cracking jokes and stuff like that. Him and Quincy Fender probably can't be in the same room because they keep messing around in classes and stuff like that. But everybody gets along. Carson Rice, me and Carson Rice are good friends. Greg Zabrowski, like I said, Carson Callow, just a whole crew of good guys to be around. Yeah.
When we look to this week's game, you've been in preparation. It's still middle of the week. You still have some work to do.
Yeah.
You get practices tomorrow and Friday before the game on Saturday afternoon. But based on what you saw last year, based on what you know about your team, based on what you know about this year's Almond, Bancroft, Eagle squad, what does your team have to do this week to be successful?
We got to shut down Aiden Phillips, especially on offense. We can't really let him get the ball too much. And then we got to make sure we don't really let anything outside. And that's going to be kind of key to winning the game is shutting him down and then getting some pressure from the D-line, get some 50-50 balls, and then hopefully get some picks.
Well, you talked all about stopping them. Mm-hmm. What about offensively? What do you have to do? Because obviously, again, I hate to use the term limited, but obviously, maybe the pass offense won't be quite as dangerous, but I think that we saw a little bit last week that it could be possible. Yeah. What do you expect offensively this week?
Just to keep moving the ball constantly, stay ahead of the chains, keep the ball out of Allman's hands, don't give them really a chance to score, and then just keep melting the clock and running the ball.
We had Coach Tubbs on earlier tonight from Stratford, back-to-back state championships, championship caliber program. I consider Newman Catholic in that same regard, right? Championship caliber program. Question I asked him was, what, coming off championships like that and being a program like of that level, what were his goals for the season when you come into a season like this? I'm going to ask you the same question. Coming into this season, what were the goals that kind of Coach Micklig had for you guys, but you guys as a team and players had for yourselves?
Yeah, especially for me, a big goal is to go undefeated this season, and then definitely be a lock for the playoffs and make a run there. Is the big one for me. And then, of course, keeping everybody healthy and throughout the year and stuff like that. And we didn't quite get there this year. We'll have to try. They'll have to try next year. But yeah, just keeping everybody healthy and just playing good football every week.
Anything else before the final question?
No, great job.
All right. We always wrap up our interviews with our student athletes with one final question, especially as a senior.
Mm-hmm.
And you've obviously gone through the process with Newman Catholic football for the last number of years. For maybe a freshman that is just starting their journey with this program, what piece of advice would you give them?
Treat every rep like it's your last, I guess, because that's something that I've kind of just been like, that's kind of been in my head this whole year. As I'm a senior, this is my last shot. This is my last ride. So I've just been trying to take advantage of every single chance I get from and it's not just about playing football, hanging out with your team outside of school, bonding, doing stuff on the weekends with those guys, just all around making the most you can out of football, because it is such a great sport, and it's brought basically every relationship with my friends that I have and made strong relationships for my whole life.
Fantastic.
Agreed. That's what, as a coach, that's one thing we kind of always talked about. You know what? You're going to go on and do a lot of great things in life, and what college and jobs and family and all those things, but there'll never be anything exactly like high school football in your life. So I agree with you. Make the most out of every moment, and good luck the rest of the year.
Thank you so much.
Evan Groene, Newman Catholic High School senior lineman, our student athlete guest for this weekend. Again, Evan, thank you for popping on over.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We're going to come back, wrap up the review of last week. We haven't even talked about the Newman game as part of 8-player. We'll talk about the Great Northern Conference, and then we'll look forward to a lot of interesting matchups, including that Newman game against Almond Bancroft coming up Saturday here on WXCO. But we'll be back in just 2 minutes here on the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO.
Week 2 football features several notable upsets, including 3 state champs going down. I'm Travis Wilson, and this is a WisSports.net Minute brought to you by Just a Game Fieldhouse in Wisconsin Dells. More high school sports news after this. You may have heard of Just a Game Fieldhouse in Wisconsin Dells, one of the country's premier destinations for youth sports and events, but did you know that Just a Game does so much more? Just a Game also delivers end-to-end apparel, equipment, and event solutions with their state-of-the-art screen printing and embroidery facility that can help with branding for your team and business items, including uniforms, apparel, and more. Just a Game also offers digital services that include a cashless digital platform and event live streaming. Just a Game has also added a second brand new facility in Reedsburg. Find more information at justagame.com. It was upset city in week 2 of the high school football season. 3 defending state champions went down. That included defending Division II winner Badger, falling in an instant classic to Slinger 35-31. Aquinas has won 3 straight D5 crowns, but the Blue Golds went down to host Columbus 20-16. In a battle of defending champions, 2-time Division VI winner Stratford outlasted Old Merriwood Conference rival Edgar 21-8. Badger and Edgar were the top-ranked teams in D2 and D7 respectively, and a third top-ranked team would go down as well, with Arrowhead, the number 1 team in Division I, dropping a 24-21 decision to Homestead. Madison Memorial's 49-34 win over Waunakee was noteworthy for a number of reasons. It was the first non-conference loss for Waunakee since 2013, when they fell to Edgewood. The WSN archives go back to 2002, and during the WSN era, this was the first time Waunakee lost a non-conference home game, not counting the playoffs. On Thursday night, Appleton East shut out Kettle Moraine 6-0, as the Patriots have not been to the playoffs since 2019, while Kettle Moraine has 10 postseason victories in the last 3 years. In other noteworthy contests, Oconomowoc defeated Sussex Hamilton 21-14, Luther shut out Bangor 28-0, and DC Everest was all over River Falls 51-26. This has been a WisSports.net Minute. Check us out online at WisSports.net.
And welcome back, Big High School Sports Show, 98.9 WXCO, BullFallsRadio.com, mobile devices by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Again, brought to you by K5 Construction, a family-owned and operated custom builder that stands out from the rest for its commitment to quality and excellence. From design and planning to the final construction, K5 Construction delivers superior results on every project. So thanks to them for providing support to this show, and they also provide support to our Wausau West football broadcast this season as well, along with former Wausau West head football coach Jason Foster, also the athletic director at Wausau West. So very happy that despite his busy job, he comes by here every Wednesday night, and glad you're all with us as well. And Evan Groene was terrific, wasn't he?
Absolutely. I mean, we're three. I would say we're 3 for 3 on the year.
I guess these linemen know how to talk too,
yeah,
right?
I think so. I think they may even be better than these fast guys who get to touch the ball all the time.
Yeah, I tell you, my newfound focus here on the line. It doesn't mean we're gonna not give some love to the skill guys, but I really wanted to have the opportunity to talk to some of these linemen because, again, even when I'm doing the broadcast, I do the stats. There's no stats for the linemen except for tackles, of course, and I have a hard time keeping track of everything. And these guys are really, in a lot of ways, the key to success for football programs. You know it. I mean, for all the years you coached, if you don't have a line, it's not going to work, is it?
If you don't have a good line coach, if your line don't have good relations, I mean, really, it comes down to communication skills. I mean, they have to block. They all have to block. They're big, strong guys, but at the end of the day, they do so much communicating up front as far as what the defense across from them is giving them, or vice versa, what the offense is going to run. So I thought he did a great job. I think he's got some special relationships, and kind of like we touched on right before break, that's what high school athletics and high school football is all about, is they're making lifelong memories and relationships that they'll take with them forever.
And a pretty good list of extracurriculars as well. I thought that was very impressive. Your National Honor Society and that kind of stuff. That, again, shows they're not just athletes. They actually do a great job in the classroom.
I think the other thing he touched on that's really important at Newman Catholic, but at all schools, is that ambassador role, like the link between the school and the community and the support that they give each other, I think is great. And I think it sounds like he's a big part of that at Newman.
Let's talk about the Great Northern Conference. I know those folks who are waiting for the Great Northern saying, holy cow, we're 90 minutes into the show. We have still have the Great Northern Conference review. Well, let's talk about it because the Merrill Blue Jays last Thursday night moved to 2-0 on the season, rallying past Crandon 22-18. It was looking bleak for Merrill. They were down 18-7 with under 5 minutes to go. They scored once. They got the ball back. They turned it over, and they got it back, and they scored again and able to win it. And, again, a big win for Merrill. But I got to give a shout-out to Cruz Palubicki of Crandon. He had himself a night. He had 26 rushes, 220 yards, and scored all 3 touchdowns. And Crandon ran for 302 yards as a team. I think if you're Merrill, you're saying, because, I mean, you give up that kind of rushing yardage and you see teams like Medford and Mosinee still to come, you're going to have to tighten it up a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yep, I think a performance by Cruz like that gives Crandon hope in that league. If you got a guy who can rush like that, and I think from a Merrill team that struggled last year, you schedule a game like this with the idea that you're going to win it, and it wasn't pretty, and I'm sure it's not how they drew it up to win. But at the end of the day, they won the game, and they did so in a way that probably showed some character building for them, and definitely something they can build upon moving forward.
And they turned the page on Crandon because they had a chance to win the matchup last year on the road. And Crandon, I think, scored on the last play of the game to win it by a point. So, again, those two teams have played a couple of very tight ones the last 2 years. And like you said, I mean, for a team that did not win until their extra game last year, Merrill to get that winning feeling. I mean, we talked to the coach 2 weeks ago, and I think, making ssure, getting off to a good start, boy, that adds juice to a program, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure. We talked a little earlier about the difference between being 1-1 and 0-2. Well, the difference between 2-0 and 1-1 going into conference play is a big deal as well.
What did I do? I got so excited I took my page away after one game because I'm so excited Merrill went 2-0, but that wasn't the only game in the Great Northern Conference last week. Last Thursday, Wausau East made the long trek to La Crosse Logan, and the game was called with 2:02 left in the third quarter, and La Crosse Logan wins 42-13. Davis Winter for the Lumberjacks was 6 of 12 passing, 149 yards. That's a pretty good average per completion. Had a couple of touchdowns. Caden Meverton, 3 catches, 116 yards, both touchdowns. Ian Stahl, 10 rushes, 52 yards. But they had a hard time checking Bradley Check. You like that?
That was good.
That was smooth, wasn't it? But Bradley Check for Logan had 16 rushes, 207 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And East had a hard time slowing down the run generally. 318 yards, 35 rushes as a team. So East got the week 1 win, ran into a good Logan squad who is now 2-0. Probably learned some lessons. And I was actually talking to Coach Johnson over at West today and saying week 2 is probably the game that you want to be tested. If you're going to have a stub toe, this is the one if you learn something going into the conference.
That was the thought I had driving away from Tom Field last week. Spash. Like we knew they played on Thursday and they totally took it to Superior, and I think it speaks to who Spash is and who they're going to be. It's a great win for them. Mm-hmm. Not a great opponent, but a great win for them. Last year, week 2, they did have a great win against a really solid Hudson team, and I think it catapulted them into the rest of their season. I think from a Wausau West standpoint, they had a nice win against a not great Superior week 1, and I think they learned a lot about themselves last week. Now, the big question is, what are they going to do coming into week 2? But I agree with 100%. You want to be challenged. You'd love to win it. You'd love to come out of that with some great momentum, but there's definitely a lot to be learned from a week 2 loss against a good opponent.
It does look like East has big play capability. We saw Ian Stahl have the 75-yard touchdown run to win the game in week 1. You see some big touchdown connections from Davis Winter to Caden Meverton, but I do think the question is, can you win at the line of scrimmage?
Right.
Because they do have the potential for big plays, but boy, you have to find a way to get your opponent off the field as well.
And 50% of their passes were completed, right? So that's when the other 6 don't get completed, the clock stops after those. And if you're going up against a team who can rush the ball like that, they possess the ball, they score the points, clock stops on your end, and it makes it tough to catch up. But I do think that translates well into their league play this week, and I think we'll see some interesting matchups because I do think that they will be able to expose some teams in the Great Northern.
And last Friday, Mosinee, a good win. I mean, there was a good opponent, Cedar Grove, Belgium, and Mosinee was able to bounce back from their loss to Stratford. And again, some question marks. They lost a lot from last year's team, and they beat Cedar Grove, Belgium, 20-6. Treve Stoffel was 6 of 16 passing, 106 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. Added 11 rushes for 83 yards and a score. Brady Locken, 2 catches for 67 yards and a touchdown. And the defense for Mosinee was the star. 6 points allowed, 160 yards of total offense for Cedar Grove, Belgium. But we're not used to seeing Mosinee. They gave up very few points last season in conference, but still, then they gave up a lot in the playoff loss that they had. Generally, they've been known as an offensive juggernaut, going back to Coach Novinsky's days as coach at Mosinee. Boy, that defense against a good opponent, that's a big sign for Mosinee last week, I thought.
Yeah, even when they were really solid the last 2 to 3 years, even on defense, a lot of that was big plays on defense, right? Jersley, how many interceptions did he end up having last year? They had a lot of punt returns for touchdowns and scores and that. So this is a really, holding a team to 160 yards of offense is a really nice game. And I do think, too, that Cedar Grove, Belgium is kind of in that same category when we talked about Bonduel and Coleman. Like, traditionally, they're a solid program. So that's a nice win for Mosinee.
Onalaska went to Medford and won 33-18. Even numbers. 284 yards rushing for Medford, 281 for Onalaska. Paxton Rothmeyer had a good night for Medford, 26 rushes, 153 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Not having seen the game itself, but reading about it and trying to dig into it a little bit, it just seems as though Onalaska was able to finish a little bit better than Medford did, because otherwise numbers were pretty stable.
Yeah, this is we talked about it in week 1 that Medford picks good non-conference matchups, and this was another one. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Medford gave it to them last year in week 1 or week 2, and we were kind of surprised. So turnaround is fair play, and I think this is a good program. And I think again,
it could be playing in the playoffs again, right?
And I think it's you just mentioned a couple minutes ago. I think this is a great week 2 game for Medford heading into conference play.
Antigo is 2-0, and we kind of were, the ears perked up last week because they struggled at home against Pines, who was just coming back into 11-player varsity varsity football, and they went on the road to Sturgeon Bay, and they won 27-20. It was an interesting game, 27-20. It was 0-0 at halftime. Colton Tomei, Antigo's quarterback, had a big night. He had a couple of touchdown rushes, added a 66-yard touchdown pass to Brett Krieger with 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter to give Antigo the lead, 21-20. And then it was Tomei who put it away on a 26-yard touchdown run with 2 minutes left to give Antigo the win. He also had a 65-yard touchdown run in the third quarter. So it looks like the Robins may have found themselves a quarterback that can make some plays.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean, everybody in that league is going to run the ball. Nobody's going to win that conference by throwing it. And if you have a quarterback who can run, and in addition to your running back, we know that makes a big difference.
Another team that ran the ball was Lakeland. They're 2-0 on the young season. The T-Birds defeated Ashland, former GNC opponent, 33-16. Noah Bruckner had 34 rushes, 236 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And then when they threw it, Declan McQuaid, 6 passes, 5 completions, 184 yards and 3 touchdowns. That's efficient offense, isn't it? Touchdown passes of 65, 25, and 25 yards.
Yeah,
you run it well and you get big plays with the pass.
Yeah.
Boy, that's how you draw it up,
it's
right?
a winning formula. We've talked about this in weeks past, right? Like those really good Fox Valley, the Bayports of the world, the Kimberleys, the Kaukanas, that's what they do.
And finally, Rhinelander is 2-0, and they haven't given up any points so far this year. They defeated Hayward 21-7. 8-player, again, a game that we had here on 98.9 WXCO on Saturday. Newman Catholic defeated Phillips by a score of 34-12. Quincy Fender, quarterback, had 12 rushes, 135 yards, and a touchdown, but then left with a severe lower leg injury in the third quarter. Just terrible news for the Cardinals, losing their quarterback probably for the season. Again, not official, but it was a very difficult injury for Quincy Fender. Griffin Pent, who is the running back to begin, then played quarterback, 22 rushes, 85 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He had 98 yards, but they kneeled for 3 times, and he lost 13 yards. I just want to point that out. It was actually more impressive than the numbers indicate. Stephen Clement, 10 tackles. Cooper Gould, 8 tackles. And Newman was really good defensively in forcing turnovers, and they stripped the ball very effectively, and you see that worked on in practice, and they did it very well, forcing 4 Phillips turnovers as well. Everything but losing the quarterback was very solid for Newman, and that's, again, unfortunate for the Cards, but they executed, I thought, exceptionally well and showed a lot of guts in finishing off that game after losing Fender.
Yeah, and I think Evan talked about it and made some really good points. How do you beat your big conference rival this week? I think it's going to be turnovers. He talked about getting the 50-50 balls and keeping that contained, and they're a big play team. So I think their defense, if they're going to find a way to pull this one out, is going to play a big role.
A couple of other area 8-player teams. Gilman beat Rib Lake, and Rib Lake, I bring it up because Coach Grundy's over at Rib Lake, and actually the thing about it that kind of jumped out, that score really did not indicate how close it was. It was 22-6 in the fourth quarter. Rib Lake had a drive in the first half that went 9 minutes of the second quarter, but didn't score. And that's frustrating. They ran the ball well. They actually ran it 59 times in the game for 236 yards, but not able to punch it in. Dawson Krezan, who for Gilman was 4 of 8, 197 yards. Again, that's almost 50 yards per completion.
Those are the video game numbers I was talking about earlier.
But I hope for Coach Grundy to success, because Rib Lake moving to 8-player football this year, and to see him involved on their offensive side. And again, I think what he likes to do is run that football. And I think, against a team like Gilman, that's what you had to do, keep the football. But unfortunately, you got to also finish some of those drives as well.
If I have a free Saturday this week, I might have to go find out how Coach Grundy has adapted the wing tee to 8-man football.
Thorpe beat Athens 24-8. Thorpe made it to the state final a year ago. Athens battled, but in the end, Thorpe able to win it. Lincoln Knopp had 205 yards, 17-28. Interesting numbers: 3 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's probably one reason why only 24-8 Athens was held pretty well in check offensively with 147 yards. And the number 1 ranked team I wanted to kind of mention as well in 8-player football, number 1 ranked for entertainment purposes only, as I like to say. But McDonald edged Clayton 27-26. They had a playoff game that was very interesting last year as well, that McDonald won at the end. So, and Owen Whitney, I think, is a team to keep an eye on. Former Cloverwood Conference powerhouse, and Terry Lobby, still the coach over there, they beat Prairie Farm 57-0. So again, we'll keep an eye on it. And think about 8 players. All the games matter. It's not like 11 player with these non-conference games. In the end, they have a formula, 16 teams. Conference championships, conference records don't mean anything. It's the entire breadth of the work that's done that ultimately leads to a 16-team playoff in 8-player football.
And it's interesting to see as we go, as the years go on in this, we're kind of starting to see, like in 11-player football, which teams and programs are emerging as kind of the front runners from year to year. So that's kind of nice to see as well.
We're going to come back in 1 minute and preview this week's action in high school football. That's coming up as we continue the Big High School Sports Show, brought to you by K5 Construction on 98.9 WXCO. On Saturday, it's a battle of the top 2 teams in the 8-player football Mid-East Conference as the Newman Catholic Cardinals play host to Elman Bancroft. Hear all the exciting action live on 98.9 WXCO, online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. Coverage begins with the pregame show at 12:35 and the opening kickoff at 1 p.m. Newman Catholic High School football on 98.9 WXCO is brought to you by Red Robin Restaurant, Sun Printing, the Clover Belt Credit Union, and North Star Restoration. It's Newman Catholic taking on Elman Bancroft in 8-player football varsity action. Saturday, starting with the pregame show at 12:35, opening kickoff at 1 on 98.9 WXCO, online at bullfallsradio.com. Mobile devices and Alexa by searching WXCO and on the Civic Media app. And welcome back, Big High School Sports Show on 98.9 WXCO. With Jason Foster, I'm Chad Holmes. Again, if you miss any part of the show, it will be up as a podcast when we're done with it, and just after 8 o'clock. You can go to bullfallsradio.com, click on sports, go to civicmedia.us, go to shows, and also wherever you get your podcasts, and you can subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the Big High School Sports Show. And who would want to miss a minute? You want to listen?
That's a great question.
2 complete hours, you got to take it all in. But let's look at the action this week, starting with the Wisconsin Valley Conference. I will be at Carson Park in Eau Claire. Are you going to be at Carson Park in Eau Claire on Friday?
I will. That is my plan.
There
yes.
you go. But I thought you were going to be in Superior. You weren't in Superior, were you?
Well, my day job prevented me from going to Superior.
Okay. No.
This is the car's gassed up. We're heading to Eau Claire.
It's a wonderful place to go.
Yes,
I'm looking forward to it. And see the Warriors take on the Eau Claire North Huskies. Again, we'll be on the air at 6:35 for the pregame here on 98.9 WXCO and online. But this is a significant game. I mean, I think Eau Claire North kind of made a statement 2 weeks ago when they took Menominee to a 3-point game. And Menominee, always a very good program in that part of the state. They did, have a rough one against New Richmond last week. Wausau West, of course, started with Superior, faced a good Hudson team. What's your take on this one?
I think it's a toss-up. I think Eau Claire North is new to the conference, a little bit of an unknown, but what we do know about them is they each of the last few years, they finally have some consistency in their program, and they've taken some nice steps forward. I know that they're big up front. I do know they like to throw the ball a little bit. Their tackles are great big guys, and I think the outcome of this game puts into motion what the top half and the bottom half of the new conference is going to look like. I think the winner of this game has a little bit of a leg up in competing for a conference championship, and the loser of this game probably has some work to do to get into the playoffs.
And the thing, that's the point I was going to make, that when you start off your season in the conference with a loss, that just makes that ultimate goal, the first goal, make the playoffs. And then, of course, you want to win the conference championship if it's all possible. But you want to be in the playoffs. And when you lose that first conference game, that makes it just a little bit more difficult, especially with, you look at the schedule coming up as well. So, again, that'll be an interesting one Friday night in Eau Claire. Also, Wisconsin Rapids at DC Everest. And Evergreens, again, I mean, they just pounded that football last week. I was, again, very impressed with that win at River Falls. And one of the keys, I think, again, for Everest and anybody else is to do it on a consistent basis. Right. I mean, if they're able to do that again, then it's really a major step forward, because I have not seen them just dominate the way that they did against a fairly solid team. We'll see how good ultimately, but then it's about building on it, isn't it?
It's about building on it, and it's about, and this is true at all levels, right? High school football, college, and in the NFL is having the discipline to stay with it, right? Because everyone loves throwing the ball, everyone loves those big stats that way, but running the football and playing good defense, watch every state championship game at every level, and that's the recipe. So you've had that success. Did you feed your receivers enough? Did your quarterback get enough? Those are the things, right? So you know you can do it. Will they stay committed to it? And if they do, I think they're going to be tough to beat. Tough game for Rapids.
Yeah, what about Rapids? I mean, Tony Viola's been around a long time. He's been through it all, coming off a loss like last week. I got to think that Rapids is going to come back and play a solid football game.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is when you look at the old Wisconsin Valley Conference, this is about as good a rivalry as it gets. You go back to the Stephen Hagen Beagle days, and sometimes, right? I mean, there's the jug between Spash and Rapids.
Old River Jug.
The old River Jug. Like, so in these rivalry games, that's the cliche. You throw out the records because it doesn't matter. There aren't much records at this point. So, yeah, I think Rapids has some fight in them, and this is a true rivalry game for them. We should see if Rapids is going to show some life, this is probably going to be the week.
I think for Stevens Point hosting Eau Claire Memorial, it's how many points the Panthers are going to score.
Yeah, I would agree.
Memorial has shown no defense in 2 weeks.
You hit it on the head there. That's going to be a game. It's at Spash again for them. They definitely are still working on their offense. I mean, they scored a bunch against Superior, but they're getting their identity, right? How much run, how much pass. They have a great quarterback, and it's a great week to do it against a team that's struggling on defense.
Part of this new conference involves a crossover game, and the team and the school that got the short straw this year is Marshfield, because Rice Lake will be their crossover game this week. Rice Lake has been outstanding the first 2 weeks. It's been a tough go of it for Marshfield. I guess for the Tigers, two-pronged. Got to stop that run, and got to find some offense.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, when we started this new conference, you tried, at least the first time through, these crossover games were kind of done by enrollment. So this is the smallest team in the Wisconsin Valley against the smallest team in the Big Rivers. Unfortunately for Marshfield, that's Rice Lake, and state championship powerhouse. And not only is their defense going to be tested for Marshfield, but it's going to be a tall order to score points against Rice Lake if they've struggled to score them against New Richmond and Menominee early. So it's a tall order for sure.
Great Northern Conference, again, it's intriguing. I think the Great Northern is always intriguing, and I think we got some interesting matchups. You got Mosinee at Merrill to start things off. Merrill is 2-0. Mosinee, again, I think showed something last week, especially defensively. Merrill has had offensive troubles last year, scoring points. A little bit better so far. Obviously, they've been able to put a few points, but the way that Mosinee defensively played, I think that matchup between the Merrill offense and the Mosinee defense may be the big one. Can Merrill find a way to put up some offensive numbers against Mosinee?
Yeah, I think when Coach Wadzinski was here a couple weeks ago, he kind of touched on that they're a program that's taking steps in the right direction. They're still inexperienced. They still have a lot of young guys on the football field. And I think what Mosinee brings is, did they lose some key players from the past couple of years? Absolutely. But are they a tough, hard-nosed football team who knows how to win? Yes, I think they still are. So I think this will be a tough one for Merrill.
At Tom Field on Friday night, a little history will be made. It will be the first Great Northern Conference football matchup involving the Wausau East Lumberjacks. And Wausau East will be home against the Tomahawk Hatchets. And again, talk about intriguing this year. It's going to be intriguing seeing Wausau East go through this for the first time, starting with Tomahawk.
Yeah, I think this is we talked about it a little bit with Marshfield and Rice Lake. This is the biggest school in the Great Northern going up against a small school in the Great Northern, but probably in a somewhat similar position in their football programs currently. East is just in their second year of being back to 11-man football, and Tomahawk feels good about some of their talent right now and getting back into the Great Northern Conference. So we talked about the Eau Claire North and West matchup and going to kind of see where teams are going to be in that conference. I think this is another one for this conference that will whoever gets a W in this one, I think kind of gives them a leg up towards the top three, or top 4 or bottom 4.
Right. Antigo is at Medford, and the Robins have found a way the first 2 weeks. It's going to get a lot tougher this week, and Medford's going to try to pound it, but then again, Antigo, they're going to need some big plays again from Tomei, their quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many big plays he has in there. At the end of the day, their defense is going to have to stop Medford moving the football, and that's a tall order for everybody in this conference. So and Antigo's getting back on a bus again after heading east last week. They're going to head over to Medford. So we will see if Medford's ready to make a statement and say this conference is ours this year, and Antigo will see which direction they're heading.
I think Rhinelander might be one of those teams that could pop up this year, just based on the defense early. Again, you don't want to take too much from the first 2 games, non-conference, but defensively, Rhinelander's been very good. Offensively, they haven't put up a huge amount of points, but it looks like they have something to build on the defensive side, and they will be at Lakeland. And Lakeland is always sort of they've been a team that's traditionally been starting slow and then coming on late in the season last couple of years. And this is, I think, another of those games in the GNC that's very significant early on.
Yeah, I think this one's a huge question mark to me because I think they both have shown things in weeks 1 and week 2 that they did not show last season. And I think that their opponents for both of them, the old GNC opponents in Ashland and Hayward, I don't think are very good. So I think we're about to find out what was fool's gold and which one of these teams is kind of heading in the right direction.
CWC-Large, Colby at Amherst. Normally you would think, major matchup, but Colby, some big question marks, and I think Amherst off to a very good start.
Yeah, I think Amherst definitely has a nod on this one, especially being at home, and Colby's kind of it's their time to kind of turn this thing around, or at least come out and compete, which they've struggled to do weeks 1 and 2.
A few years ago, this was actually a very intriguing matchup. These schools not very far from each other, and Spencer Columbus has some really good teams. Last few years, it's been a little bit more difficult, but Stratford at Spencer Columbus, and I think Spencer Columbus very happy to have got that win at Pittsville last week because it's going to be much more difficult this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Coach Tubbs kind of talked about what this conference looks like and who they kind of circle when they go through the different matchups. I would say coming off of Edgar, this is probably a good one for them to get to kind of get everything heading in the right direction as they hit some of those bigger matchups down the road.
I think a massive game for Marathon this week. A game that will be heard on the Sports 2 stream of BullFallsRadio.com and the Civic Media app, and then on tape delay following the Wausau West broadcast here on 98.9 WXCO. Tom Weaver will be in Greenwood, as Greenwood will be hosting this game. Marathon at Loyal Greenwood. Red Raiders, I think, would like to establish a bit more of a run game, and also I think they need to be able to try to slow down the run game. I think with True Thursday, got themselves a dangerous offense with the throw, but at the same time, you're asking a lot to carry your entire team based on the pass game, right?
Absolutely. And my goodness, it's week 3, so it's dumb for these words to even come out of my mouth. But is this when you look at who's in this conference, is this kind of a must-win for Marathon? Like, do they need to get on their winning ways in conference here? Because there's some tough ones down the road for them.
And Whitburn at Wyoming Fremont. And again, I think a couple of teams that had success a year ago, and still some questions to be answered.
Yeah, I think at this point last year, you felt really good about where Whitburn was at and felt like Wyoming was ascending a little bit. And Wyominga's a question mark as far as if they've taken a step forward this year or not, but we feel like maybe Whitburn has taken a slight step backwards, so this should be a great game.
And CWC Small, and I think the game of the year. Again, first week of conference, but it's not going to get much better than this. Edgar at Auburndale, and I got to say, this is going to be, I mean, I would pay money for this one because I do think that Auburndale is that good that they can give Edgar a game and perhaps take the W this week.
Yeah, and it's been a really long time since Edgar's had 2 L's hung on him in back-to-back weeks, so I can only imagine what practice has been like this week for Coach Sins.
And just by the luck of the draw, another of the first week games is another massive game in this conference. I think the top 4 teams are facing each other this week.
Agreed.
When you got Iola Scandinavia at Abbotsford, and you talk about teams that like to run the football. We saw with Iola with their incredible, their yardage last week, and then Abbotsford always likes to run the football.
Yeah, I think so too. Just from the week matchups, I think Abbotsford just consistently runs it week in and week out, close to 200 yard, at least 100-yard rushers each week, and I think Iola Scandinavia has some eye-popping numbers. So, are they the favorite in this one? We'll see.
I think I like Iola based on what they did against Wyowega, again on the road last week, but back on the road this week. Pacelli and Assumption, and again when you look at these last games, Pacelli, Assumption, Rochelle, Pittsville. Again, when those teams get together, these are important games because when you try to find the route to make to the playoffs, these are the kind of games each of these teams has to win, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We talked earlier, like where are they at from a program? Where are their numbers? And I think in this conference, that's where you got to make your hay, because one thing that was interesting to me last year coming on the show is looking at the Great Northern schedule and how it played out, who gets their wins early and then looking great, and all of a sudden they hit the buzzsaw at the end, and this is where these teams can get their wins.
Finally, an 8-player, again, a game that we'll have Saturday afternoon here on WXCO, Newman Catholic and Alvin Bancroft. We talked a lot about with Evan Groene. Again, these are the top two teams in this conference. I think that the loser is going to be they're hoping for somebody else to beat the other team. It's not going to happen. Right. This is a conference championship game in week 1 of the conference season. And again, Newman will have to find a way without Quincy Fender, and that's a big, big loss.
Yeah, I can only imagine that Coach Mickleg would have liked to seen this one a few weeks down the road, but it's a huge battle for them, and it's a great gut check, and we'll see. If nothing else, you want to see how they come out and respond and compete after losing such important guys last week. So good luck with Newman this week.
And you can go to Rib Lake on Saturday and see Coach Grundy against Schwamigan.
There we go.
Hey, as we got the last couple of minutes here, I tell you, there's some really good Week 1 conference matchups. I mean, we talked about it. I thought about the 8-man game. We talked about the CWC small games. I mean, there are some massive games here that will have big bearing on conference championships when all is said and done.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the new teams in these new conferences and how they match up. You asked earlier about how much stock do you put into the scores and the crossovers, and I look forward to having Eau Claire North and Memorial here. I look forward to seeing how East stacks up and Tomahawk and the Great Northern. So as we get into these conference games, we'll start to have a little better picture of maybe who's going to be on top or who's going to be in the top half, who's going to be in the bottom half. So really looking forward to seeing how these matchups play out this week.
And we'll have to ask again at the start of next week's show, how much do we know? Because again, I do think there's so many questions for so many of these schools yet, and 2 weeks down. And the thing is, after this week's games, we're a third of the way through the regular season.
Yeah.